Hi, everyone, and welcome to my webinar, Generate Multilingual Product Descriptions Automatically with AX Semantics. I'm Alex. I'm Customer Success Manager at AX Semantics, and I want to show you today how you can easily and with less effort get texts in many different languages. Okay, so then I would say, let's start. So what's on the agenda today? First, I want to tell you a little bit about the advantages of translation with AX and the differences to, let's say, classic translation. Then we will talk about planning and implementation of multilingual projects. So what are the main steps? Then a very important issue is how should your data look like for the different languages, and then, which parts do you have to take in account? Which parts do you have to translate in the cockpit, in the tool? And then at the end, when you have all the theory, I will give you an example of all the things I have talked about in a small example directly in the tool. So, okay. What are the differences between automated multilingual text generation with AX and, let's say classic translation? Doesn't matter if we talk about machine translation or manual translation, which is done from a translator. So what are the differences? So at the classic translation means that you have a complete whole text that is translated to another language. At AX, we have another strategy. You have your first rule set for your first language finished, and then you can use the rule set of this base language and reuse it for language 2, language 3, language 4. And what you're doing is you translate the small parts, so speaking more precisely, the statements. And with this language-specific parts, the engine will generate, as in the basic language, unique and new texts and specific texts for your products. So this strategy leads to all the other advantages I want to mention. First one is high and consistent quality in your text, because you define once how you want to translate stuff, how you want to translate word in your context. After this, your text is created rule-based. By this, you can make sure that your texts have always the same quality. Not so in the classic translation. Again, no matter if it's machine translated or by an editor or translator, because you translate the whole text. And what matters here is the context of the surroundings words that maybe lead to a translation you don't like, or if you have a translator, the day shape of your translator will influence the text and they will differ from each other, which, as I said, is not possible at AX because you define the rules and the engine sticks to that rules always when it generates the text. That leads to another advantage of saving costs and time, because you don't have to translate every text. You can reuse the rule set of the basic language, and because it's rule-based, you don't have to proofread every text. And what is the case in classic translation? You don't know how it is translated, if it's machine translation that has done it for you, or sure, if a translator is doing it for every specific text, then it's obvious that you need much time to translate all your product descriptions. Last but not least, with AX, you can do country-specific individualization of your text because, it's not a one-to-one translation, but you can define how you want things translated. And that means you can also do content-related differences between languages or regions. I want to give you an example. Like in most of the places in Europe, the TV is, you can find it in the living room, but that's not the case in Latin America. So here more often you find the TV in the kitchen. And if you have a one-to-one translation, you can't take that in account. You will have in your translation nice hours in the living room, enjoying your series. But with our tool, you can say, okay, I know for Spanish in Chile, Peru, whatever, you want to make a difference here and you want to write a different story. So that can be done with our tool. Okay, so then what are the main steps in planning and implementing a multilingual project? Before you start, even before you start with your first language to do, you should be aware of which differences you want to make or you are forced to make between the different languages. That can be, maybe it's another target group you try to reach for the different languages. You need different text length or text formats. So maybe it can be the case you have one shop and you just click another symbol of the flag and then it switches. But maybe it's completely different website it's on and with different conditions that has to be taken in account. So that should be clear at the beginning. Then are there legal requirements that are important? So maybe you have to say something has to be mentioned in one country and in the other you are not allowed to mention it, and so on. There are different regulations here. And then I gave you the example, maybe you have cultural or country-specific differences you want to take in account. Next step is then prepare your language-specific data. We will take a deeper look at this point in a few minutes. And if all these steps are clear, then you start to create your rules and your phrases for language 1, so for the basic language. You shouldn't do that in parallel because the first point is you get faster first results if you do first one language. So let's say you need some weeks to finish it, and then from week, let's say 3 or 4, you have text that you can publish in this language. If you're doing all that stuff parallel, maybe in a few months you have all the languages, but in all these months you don't have any results you can benefit from. That's the first point. And the second is with your first project, you can, then you have a project that is proofread in rule set and phrases and all that stuff. Because if you have done a project yet, you plan things, but things are changing in the process of creating your project because you see, okay, this information is better combined with another, or there's one excuse I have to take in account, and so on. So it's growing and it's improving in the process. And if you have one language ready that you are fine with from the rules, from the phrases, and it works for your projects, then you're fine. And then it's working for the other languages too. And you haven't done, let's say, the effort for 3 languages and then recognizing later it's not working. So from this point of view, it's better to do one language. And if you have this first language, then you can go on and translate and individualize this project for language 2 to X. As I said, data is very important. Let's take a look at how your data should look like. So the good news are, if you don't have language-specific data, so let's say you just have your data in English, that's no problem. You can do the whole translation process in our tool with just this one data type. That's possible, but here in my effort pyramid, I want to show you how your data should look best so that you have the least effort in the tool later. But let's start at the base. Most effort would be if you have identical data for all languages, because let's take a look at it. We have here 2 data sets for washing machines. That's my example for later. And as I said, let's say you have your first language is English and you want to have your text in German, but you just have also for German the same data information. That would mean you have to translate the language-specific parts, that you can see here in the tool to German in this case. So how many effort you will have depends on which type of product you have. As you can see here, washing machine, most of the information is number-based. Numbers are not language-specific, so that's good because all this stuff, energy consumption, capacity, and so on, you don't have to translate. So let's see what's the next step, but it's only a little bit better is if you have keys and values in your data language specific. How would that look like? You know that data, that's the English data. And for German, you would have this data. So the values differ, as you can see, it's washing machine, and here we have Waschmaschine, but also the keys differ. So you have category, and here you have category. And the problem here is you have to operate in two directions on two different levels. The first level is that you have two different references, so data fields, and you always have to say in the tool then, okay, if it's German, I want to take a look at data field category. If it's another language or English, I want to use the other one. And you have to define it in the tool. Or if you have the first language, you have to add this information, adding the new data field, bringing it together, and so on. The second level is for the stuff that is rule-based. So let's say you have a statement for the fact that your washing machine is controllable via smartphone. You have a statement for it. Then in your condition, you have to prove now for two things, not only for controllable via smartphone, but also for steuerbar über Smartphone. So also on this level, you have to operate in two directions and taking into account these two different values. Okay, at position 2, that's much more better than 3 and 4, is that you have uniform keys, but language specific values. That would look like this. So as you can see, the keys are always the same, category, capacity, and so on. But you have, where necessary, language specific values. So that's good because you don't need two different data nodes to refer to an issue, to an information. But again, for the condition stuff, for the triggers, you would have to prove for controllable via smartphone and for steuerbar über Smartphone. So that leads to position 1 that brings together these two things. And it means, again, the keys are uniform here, but you have two different data fields for your values. So you would have a data field for the logic. Here, the values are the same as in the basic language. And for the part that is output in the text, then you use the version that is language specific. How would that look like? Okay, so for these three things, the category, the programs, and the smart home features, you would have, as said, one version, one of the data fields is, you have it marked with the underscore logic, and it's the same. So it's washing machine here, and it's washing machine there. So if you have a condition that is depending on that information, you can reuse the whole stuff that you have done in the first language, but for the part that should be output in your text, so it helps programs for the textiles, cotton wool, and so on. You have your values language specific ready for German too. So then it would output, es gibt Programme für die Textilien, Baumwolle, Wolle, Kochwäsche, and so on. We have discussed data, so but which elements in the tool may need to be translated? These are statements, the phrase notes, lookups, and lexicon entries. I will give you an example for this three. What you should take in account for the lexicon entries is the fact that languages, they work differently and they have different grammatical circumstances. What do I mean with this? So let's say in our example, we'll show you from English to German. So for English language, for example, the determiner, the definite determiner, so like the washing machine, it's always the same. It's for singular, for plural, and we don't really have a real gender in English. So without having lexicon information for an entry, so like washing machine or whatever you can try or whatever, the engine can set it rule-based because it knows, okay, determiner definite is always a the. That's not the case in German, because in German you have gender, and in German there is no rule that, you know, washing machine, die Waschmaschine, so it's feminine, and der Trockner, it's masculine. So that is lexicon based. So you would, if it's not in our general lexicon, you would have to bring it into the lexicon. Yeah, then there are also other languages where you have gender, but you can set a determiner rule-based, like in Spanish or in Italian. You know, if your word ends with O and A, in most of the cases, you know, O is for masculine, A is for feminine, and then it can be set by rule. So you have to know which are the specific grammatical circumstances for your languages. Okay, so I would say it was enough theory. Let's jump in the tool. First of all, we need the data for the two different languages, English and German. As you can see here, we have for these three washing machines the data in the English collection. And as you can see here, it's the version which was at the position 1. So we have program textiles logics, and we have program textiles for the language specific stuff. As you can see here, in the collections, you define the language, because the collection defines which rule set and which language phrases the tool will use for this collection, and then for the texts that come out of this collection. So the collection defines the language. What we have to do now is to upload a German data. So I want to copy this. It's washing machine, but for BE, for German. And I have German, Germany here. Then I can create a collection, and I can import the data. So let's take a look at it. So as you can see here, we have the same project, so the same names, and also the UIDs, they can be identical, or yeah, if it's the same product, it should be identical, so that's no problem. In different collections, the UIDs can repeat. So let's take a look at this German data. So we have the keys the same, programs, text, and logics with the English version in it, and then we have the language-specific version in it, and then you can see the values are in German, Baumwolle, Wolle, Kochwäsche, Jeans. We will mark these three products as test objects. And then we will switch to the composer. So let's go to the right mode. What you can see here, so here is my English rule set with all the formulations and stuff. And if you take a look at the preview test object section, you will see that, yeah, you can see out of which collection the test objects are, so that you can easily decide for the right test object for the language version that is shown. Okay. If you're trying it out and you're not seeing this country codes, language codes, then just go to your project settings, go to feature previews and check this feature language specific test objects. Then you will see it as we see it now here. Okay, what is important, as you can see, we do all the languages in one project, and you will also have the same statements for it. And here is the section where you can jump from one to another language. Okay, so how do you translate the stuff? How is that done? You can copy your English version and you can bring it to the German version. So as I said, it's the same statement, it's no duplication. If you change something in the trigger, it will be changed also for all languages. So that is very important to know. Then I've copied it and I pasted in, and miracle, it is automatically translating your sentence. So that's a huge help here. So you don't have to do it one by one, setting up the containers again. That's done automatically in the tool. For your a little background information, it's sent to DeepL. The parts that are not fixed are marked, and later on it will be translated to the containers and also branchings and stuff. So that it's really a big help, but you always should prove, or a native speaker or your translator should prove if it's fine, because DeepL is a nice thing and good, but there can be things wrong, or maybe you want to use another word in this specific context. So then you can easily change it here. But let's go back to the English version. As you can see here, in the container, you have set up definite as a determiner. And what happens automatically in the second language, on the next language, so it takes the container settings and uses the language specific stuff. Sure, in German, we don't use the, we use die, der, das, and that's done here, and you have a correct sentence and a correct determiner here. Bosch präsentiert die Waschmaschine like a Bosch. And what you can see here is, if we go to the, if we switch the languages, you can see it has, so you will be informed, but it directly uses the same test object with the same UID, but for the language here. So yeah, preview using test object like Bosch DE, so it switches itself. Okay, so then let's go to the next statements, which talks about the smart home features of the washing machine. In terms of smart home, you have the ability to operate the device via the smartphone, download apps, and save energy with the smart grid feature. Again, let's copy this phrase and bring it to the German version. In Bezug auf Smart Home haben Sie die Möglichkeit, Apps herunterzuladen und Energie zu sparen mit der Smart Grid Funktion. But so these were the versions that are right. But as you can see here, controllable via smartphone, we have to do a little work here. And that's because I want to show you this lookup section where you can translate the stuff. So let's go to transform. Let's go to smart home features. We're using the logic because we're not using it. Maybe we go back to this one. In the tool, you can't find it can be operated via smartphone, and you can download apps, but it's called apps loadable, controllable via smartphone. So these phrases are not suitable for the context of the formulation. So that's why we're using a lookup to do this, but it's not for only translating, but bringing it in a term that can be used in the tool. So that's why it's better to have the key, one key, so the English key, and then translate it to the different languages. So let's take a look at this lookup table. So these are the English keys: apps loadable, controllable via smartphone, smart grid ready. Let's switch to English. That's the things we have defined for English. Apps loadable will lead to download apps. Smart grid ready will lead to save energy with the smart grid feature. If we go to German, you will see these are the ones I have translated yet. And again, here you can copy the English version, bring it to German. And okay, here we have this very complex German thing. In the context of this phrase, in Bezug auf Smartphone haben Sie die Möglichkeit, we need a construction with this zu. So here we have to know that it's nearly fine, but not perfectly fine. I have to add zu, das Gerät über das Smartphone zu bedienen. Now we have all the stuff ready. And as you can see, it's not controllable via smartphone, but in Bezug auf das Smartphone haben Sie die Möglichkeit, das Gerät über das Smartphone zu bedienen, Apps herunterzuladen und Energie zu sparen. So that's how you translate stuff in the lookup tables. But let's say you want to have a version, you're just using the values as you can find it in the data field. Let's say you have the English version. In regard of smart home, the device provides the following features. Column, and then we're not looking for this logic thing, but for smart home, the variable is called smart home features. Now you see it's not from the lookup, it's the version you have seen in the data. And if we copy this to German, im Hinblick auf Smart Home bietet das Gerät folgende Features: steuerbar über Smartphone-Apps, ladbar, smart grid ready. Then maybe we want to make a bullet point out of it. So should have done it in the English version, unordered list, and then you have some nice bullet points. Let's go to the English version. Yes, and that's all done because here we're using this logic data field, and for the bullet points, we're just using the language specific data field because we can use it as it is. And yeah, that's the data node we have here. Okay. So then let's see. Also, if you have triggers in it, the whole stuff is found or will be translated to the other language too. Das Fassungsvermögen von 7 Kilogramm macht dieses Gerät perfekt für 1 bis 2 Personen, 3 bis 4 Personen, 5 bis 6 Personen. And again, all this stuff, you don't have any work at all because you can use the version you have for English. So it's the data field for capacity, and the rules doesn't change between the languages. So all these triggers are fine. You don't have any work with it. Let's take a look at water consumption. In the German version, we have a sign to order 1,000 numbers. You have the dot, the point. And if we take a look at the English version, you have, as it is common in English language, you have the comma. So also this part are handled automatically if you're using, I don't want to hide it, if you're using an expression that's called group digits. So this expression leads to this sign between it. If we wouldn't have it, it would just be 7,000 without any signs in it. But the other stuff, the language specific stuff is handled automatically. So then we have translated statements, we have translated lookups, and the last one I want to show you is how it is done with phrase notes. We have a summary sentence here. Are you looking for a device that consumes less water, provides a wide range of programs, and is very quiet? I will show it to you. It uses the triggers we already have for the statements before, and we bring it together in the summary statement. And you should take a close look at this washing machine again. I will copy it, and you will see there's and okay. I thought I had one thing left. No problem, I will show it to you nevertheless. So let's go to transform. So if you have the triggered phrase note again, so you can all use the stuff you have in the English version can be reused. Just here in the phrase notes, you have again the possibility to refer between different languages. So let's say, what I did is I copied is very quiet from English United States to the German version. Again, here, these are, German is, it's a little, or maybe not, you know it now, it's a little bit complex with the verbs and in which order they come. So for the formulation we have here, the ist has to be at the end. So again, you really need to proofread this stuff, or a native speaker has to proofread this. Sehr leise ist, and then we get the output you have got before. Sie sind auf der Suche nach einem Gerät, das wenig Wasser verbraucht, eine große Auswahl an Programmen bereitstellt und sehr leise ist. Dann sollten Sie sich diese Waschmaschine genauer ansehen. Again, you have diese Waschmaschine is because you have also in the English version, you have selected the demonstrative determiner, and that led in the German version to diese Waschmaschine. Okay. What I mentioned in the beginning is that maybe it's not only that you want to have translated your phrases, but you want to individualize it, and you want to have different versions for different languages. What we can imagine here is, let's switch to English again. So at the moment, we just have one story, so it's the English story. But let's say you want to have a specific language for German. What you would do is, that's the story for the end. Then we add a new story. We call it story A. Create story. The triggers we will manage later. And let's say for this German version, you want to have introduction, maybe a different order. So the English version, smart home, is very high, but maybe for German, it's more important how less or much water it consumes. And so let's start with maybe water consumption. And as you will see here, in the English or US English version, we don't have the energy efficiency statement, because so we have this energy efficiency class A, B, C. That's a Europe thing. So in the US, they don't know what it is. They don't use it. So we don't have this statement in the English version, but we can put it in the German version. And the other stuff, okay, it's water consumption. Maybe then you have the smart homes features here. Then you have the programs amount, operating noise, capacity, and summary. So as you can see, you can define different order of the statements, and you can bring in statements that haven't been in before. I have prepared that. So as you can see here in the German version, we have a statement that talks about the energy efficiency. But okay, we're not ready. We're not almost ready, because at the moment, if we have always allow the story, it chooses randomly which of the stories should be used for the generation, but that's not helpful. We have to know in which collections we are, and if we want the English version or the German version. And that can be done with two expressions. The one expression is called current language, and it outputs, let's see here, it outputs the current language. So when you're in the composer, it will always choose the preview language you have here in this section. If I switch to English, you will get EN. Sure, later on, if you're under productive generation, it will choose the information from my collection here. And so if you don't know how these are called, if we take a look at our languages, you will see that's the language code, the first one, then you have a minus, and then you have the country code. And you can also look for the country code with a country code. Then you have round brackets, and then it will output US for the English version and DE, because we have the German version for the language here. That can be important, because let's say we have British English, so okay, Brexit and all the stuff, but let's say they have this energy efficiency classes yet, still have this, then for the British version, it would be fine to use a story with this energy efficiency class in it. But that's why we're using here the country code, and we're saying if this country code is US, we want to have this story without the energy efficiency class in it. And then we just can use these triggers for our stories here. So it's story US English here, and it's story German for this. For this story. Okay, so one last thing. In the review part, you will see you only see the test objects that are suitable, that fit to your current language. So there's no let's say opportunity to mix it up. So I have Germany. I see all the German test objects, and here again with the in the English version, I just see the English test objects, and I get a correct text here. So yeah, that's what I wanted to show you about generation of multilingual product description. And now we have some questions here. The first question is, how does the software take register? Maybe you mean that the language with register. So yeah, as you have seen here, the collection defines the language, and then you get in the results, you get the if we generate it now, we get here the English version of it. Wash presents the washing machine, and in the German version, I get this one. And here we have the German version. Wash präsentiert die Waschmaschine. So again, I'm not sure if you meant it like this. Maybe you can ask or precise which you meant. I mean, you can add a keyword collection, but what about tone of voice? This is crucial when localizing text. Yeah, that's because you're not translating your whole text. So that's what you're doing here. You have the basic language, you can copy it to the other language, but then you can decide if präsentiert is the right word for presents, or if you want to have a different one. Or yeah, as you said, if you have the keywords that should be in it, then you can make sure, guarantee that these keywords are found in this fixed text. If you're not talking about the fixed text, but about text from data fields, then you could say, okay, I know in German, I want to translate a specific thing like the Probrangs for the different textiles. You don't want to have Baumwolle, but a different one, then you just use the lookup and you translate it in the keyword you need. So that's all done here, rule-based in the tool, and then you're sure at the end that your text contains the right version and also the tone of voice. So the tone of voice is set here because you you prove it what the translation is doing, and if you're not fine with it, you just change it, and then you have the tone of voice you need. And so we have used this stuff, this language specific stuff for here, but let's say we would have a version. You could also use this stuff here in the triggers for the language specific here in the branchings. To be more precisely. Okay, so you can automate the inputs after the review. So what you see in the review is the result of the things you have implemented here. So what is important is this first version you have set up, and then you want to have the German version out of it. So you're switching to German and translating it automatically. Sure, if you don't want to have it automatically translated because you're saying, okay, it just confuses me, no problem. Under this advanced settings, you can say, no, please never translate or always ask every time when you translate it. So you can also not using this feature. So yeah, you're translating it here. But what you see in the review is the result of it. And then when you see them, you're not happy with the word, or in the context of all the other words, you're not happy, you're just going to your German version and you're seeing, okay, that has to be a little bit different. Let's give you an example here. We have the energy efficiency class. Then we could say, if this is available and you have a low water consumption, you want to use auch der Wasserverbrauch is low. So then you can all fix this stuff. So you can saying, okay, if you have a good energy efficiency class, then you want to have auch der Wasserverbrauch. And if that's not the case, you just say der Wasserverbrauch is small. But what you see in the review is the result, or what you see here. If you're not happy with it, you don't change it in this whole text, but again, you change it in your rule set. And then after that, the engine will always work with a new thing. Okay, I'm happy. That's what you meant. Then there's another question. Are there any proven data that the tool is less time consuming? I imagine for the process, we need an expert using the tool and native speaker for revising the translation. Unfortunately, I don't have yet studies or statistics there, but if you want to be sure that your text is correct, and I think in most of the cases that is very important, because if there's something wrong or a wrong word that's used that can have bad consequences, then I would always say, so if you use machine translation or if you do it at your own, sure, it depends on how many products you have. If you just have 3 washing machines, sure, please write it 6 tags for these washing machines. But let's say you have 1,000 washing machines or 10,000. I think also if you have a little bit effort to set it up here, to have a translator to translate it, but at the moment you have okay, 9 or 8 statements that has to be translated. So 8 statements and a few other stuff. Sure, you have to set up the rule set versus 10,000 of texts that you have to do manually, or you have to you create it by machine translation. But then again, you're not sure what in a specific context is used for a word and what comes out. So to be sure that your texts are right, you would have to prove it all these 10,000 texts. And so in this case, I'm sure that it would need more time to prove or to write all these 10,000 texts than to set up a rule set. Sure, you have to do a good quality assurance with your rule set to be sure you have all these cases that can be there in mind, but then you're not, it's not, there's no other human in loop needed. You then can use this text and yeah, be sure it's right. Yeah, so maybe you have some other questions, please don't hesitate to ask them here. In the meantime, I want to invite you, if you're saying, okay, that sounds interesting, but I don't have any idea how I would I would set up my project, or I have questions about my data and all this stuff. And for this, in this case, we have a cost-free workshop for you. So me or my colleague, Peter, so we'll take a detailed look at your project. We will see how would you do that in your project. Maybe we do the first translating together. And when you're interested, please use this URL, use this link. You can see in the chat now, there's a formula, just fill it out and then we will come back to you and make an appointment with you. Okay, looks like there are no more questions. So thanks again and see you soon. Bye.